Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. Welcome back, everyone. I feel like I needed to get this channeled message out earlier this week. Normally, I've been getting it out maybe Friday, maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday. So there's not been a consistent day that I've put these out. And that is for a very good reason, because I am essentially sort of following the energies as opposed to just, getting the message out on a particular day every day. But I will get one out once a week for you. It just depends on what seems to be happening throughout the week. So the reason why I felt guided to put this message out a little bit earlier is because of this super blue full moon that we just had, and all of the planets being in retrograde. Well, not all of them, but 7 of them are in retrograde right now. And what that means, not that I am well versed in astrology, because I'm not, but we all feel the effects. We all feel what's going on. So the first thing I want to say is one of the themes that are coming up is this feeling of needing to shed your old skin. Now, I did a podcast about this, a channeled message about this, I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago, August 6th, and it's called Bizarre Energy, Leaving Behind Timelines and Moving into New Energy. It was the weekly channeled message for that week. I'm having a lot of clients coming forward in the last couple of days saying that they're feeling exactly that, like they need to shed this skin. That is something that is a theme that has been going on for the last couple of months. And for me personally, I haven't been feeling that so much with this super full blue moon, but I've been feeling something very almost 3D, if you will. Like it's a 3D issue, let's put it that way. And that issue that has been coming up for me is the idea of being able to make a mistake and that being okay. So I've made a lot of mistakes over the last couple of weeks, and I can take responsibility for them, and I can say, yes, I made a mistake. If the other person can't forgive me or can't say, oh, okay, that's fine, she made a mistake, there's nothing wrong with that, let's move on, then there's nothing I can do about that. There were several instances in which this has happened. And normally what my old self would have done would have been to people please and apologize profusely over and over and over again for my mistake. That's not happening anymore. I apologized for the mistake I made. It was an incredibly, mundane type of mistake. It was a scheduling error that I made. And when you make a scheduling error, things just don't go right, especially during Mercury retrograde. If the people that you are working with can't understand that, that shows you more about them than it does about you. As long as you take responsibility, apologize once. Say, hey, I'm really sorry this inconvenienced you. I'm really sorry. But ultimately, there's nothing that you can do to change the past. You can't change what happened in that moment. Or can you? I mean, I do timeline work all the time with my clients where we go back and change the trauma or change what happened, change the energy of it. So yes, you can go back in and change the energy of what happened. But if you don't have anything to change, if there's no trauma within you, then it's not necessary. The other thing that has come up as well, and this is along the same lines, but it's about changing your mind. You're allowed to change your mind, and you're allowed to change your mind often and at the last minute if you need to. I have lived my whole life, most of the time, doing things that I didn't want to do because I didn't want to let somebody down, because I didn't want to change, cancel plans, do whatever I had committed to doing because I said that I would do it. And it's funny because I have a very, very dear friend who I've been friends with for over 20 years. And she and I had always been sort of exact opposites in that way. So I was always the person who would show up, that would be, okay, I'm committing to this, and this is what I'm going to do regardless of what happens. I will make it. I will be there. I was always that reliable person. And she was usually the person who would cancel at the last minute, who would, sort of say, I don't feel like going. I think I'm just not going to go. Or, oh, I've got this going on. I can't go. So I always looked at that as being flaky or as being, non-committal. And so I have since worked through a lot of those issues, meaning that I have accepted that about her. Now, this is the biggest thing, is that if you have a friend that's like this, who's chronically late, who's chronically canceling, you have to make a decision. You have to decide, is this friendship worth it to me enough to forgive and work around that particular situation? For me, with this particular friend, the answer was absolutely unequivocally yes. I love her dearly. There's nothing that I wouldn't do to be able to, sort of work within the boundaries of our friendship. So what did I do? Well, I decided to work around that. So maybe it's the situation where you don't really invite her many places if it's just the two of you. Maybe you decide, okay, hey, I'm going out with a bunch of friends. We're going here. If you want to come, cool. If you don't, that's fine, right? So that's one way you could do it. It's about working through those boundaries. And then also working through that abandonment or that fear that you have within yourself. So if you do make plans on your own together and she cancels at the last minute, you know that that's a possibility with this person. And so if they do cancel, you can simply say, okay, that's fine. I understand that that's what you want to do. And so now either I'm going to go make other plans or I'm going to take this night to relax, right? So you can absolutely do that. You can work within the situation that is happening in that moment. And the one thing that I've learned is that now when I'm in a space where I am not feeling aligned with doing something, going out, whatever it happens to be, I can now do the same thing. I can now say, you know what? I know that I committed to this thing, but it is okay for me to say, you know what? I'm going to not go. Now, the next part of this is often the hardest, and that is the guilt. The guilt that you feel after canceling, or the guilt that you feel after making a mistake. That is the work that you must do, is working on that piece, because the guilt is what keeps you in that loop of unforgiveness. It's unforgiveness of yourself. And so when you're working with this type of energy, essentially you're staying stuck in the energy of, I did something wrong. This person is going to hate me for what I did. This person is going to block me. This person is going to do whatever they're going to do, right? Which I did have that happen this week. It was something really minor. I belonged to a plant group on Facebook where we exchanged plant information and whatnot. And I was going to go pick up this plant from this woman who was leaving the country. And we had a couple of exchanges and it was really pleasant. And it was about an hour before I was going to pick up the plant. And I decided to look on the internet to see if it was safe for kitties. And I realized that the plant was in fact not safe for kitties, and it was an indoor plant. So needless to say, I basically said, okay, sorry, I know we've been going back and forth on this. It just dawned on me to check this out, and it's not safe for cats. So there was another woman who was wanting the plant as well. So I said, well, it looks like that's how it was meant to be, that she was meant to have this plant, right? I mean, it's something so stupid and benign, right? And, I apologized. I said, sorry, I thought that I looked this up before and I guess I didn't. And she said, yeah, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. And then next thing I know, she's removed me from the plant group. So I was like, okay, cool. That's fine. Like, I'm not upset about it at all. Like, I'm not upset. I'm just, I think it's amusing at the very least, but it's like, it's that kind of stuff that happens in our lives. It happens all the time. That kind of stuff happens all the time where you're on some weird internet group having to do with plants and all of a sudden there's weird drama that happens. Okay, cool. That's fine. And that basically says more about her than it does about me. when it comes down to it, it is very much about our own individual journeys. It is about what we feel at any given moment, if we feel like we're operating out of integrity or not, if we feel like we've made a mistake or not. And if we have made a mistake, cool. Own up to it. Say, yeah, sorry, I screwed up. And that's it. That's all you need to do is take responsibility for it and move on. You don't have to grovel for a year because you missed an appointment or because you decided to change your mind about something. That's on you. That's the feeling that you have, that feeling of guilt that propels you forward in constantly trying to make amends. And if the person isn't willing to offer you that forgiveness, there's nothing you can do about it. So obviously these are very minor things. These are very, very mundane, minor things. Let's move into what if it's something that is a little bit more serious, a more serious mistake. What happens then? Well, it's actually exactly the same process. Take responsibility and then work through whatever guilt might be coming up for you. If that guilt is coming up because of something else that you've done in the past, so maybe you've made this mistake over and over and over again, and that guilt keeps on showing you, hey, this is something that you're repeating as a pattern. Maybe it's time to take a look at it. Then maybe that is what you need to do. It is very much about going within and checking in with your heart and saying, is this, whatever this is, aligned for me? And your heart will never, ever, ever steer you wrong. I promise you that. If you are truly connected to your heart. So when it comes down to those big mistakes, it will be really up to the person that you're dealing with whether or not they choose to not only forgive you, but also let you back into their life. So these little small examples that I'm talking about are like random internet people that I've never met. So, okay, fine, cool. If they don't ever want to talk to me again, it's not really a huge deal to me, right? If it's someone who's super close to me and they decide to never speak to me again because of one mistake, well, then that's something that I have to accept. I have to say, okay, well, that's how they're feeling right now. That may not be always the case. That may not always happen. But for right now, that's how they're feeling, and I have to honor that. And I know how I'm feeling, and I have to honor that. So when you're in that space of feeling that guilt, where is that coming from? Is it coming from something old? Is it coming from something chronic? Is it something that is just brand new to you? What does that energy feel like? What does it feel like to you? Ask yourself these questions. Then the other thing that you can do is really ask yourself, okay, how much am I in my codependency of people pleasing? Because that's what people pleasing is. It is codependency. And if you are constantly trying to make up for past mistakes, that is something to also look at. Yes, of course, with the sort of larger the infraction, if you will, the more you might have to make up for it in terms of proving to the person that you have either changed or that you have worked through that particular issue, in which case you won't be making that mistake again. Sometimes it just takes time. Sometimes it takes time for that person to be able to trust that whatever mistake was made is not going to happen again. And that is something that you just have to push through. You have to go through the time. And it is always the decision of each individual person how much they are willing to take from a boundary setting standpoint. So if somebody is giving you chance after repeated chance and you continually make the same mistake, if they decide to walk away from you because of that, you have to allow that. You have to basically say, okay, I get it. This is something that I'm still struggling with and working with, and this person doesn't want to be around while I'm doing that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There will be other people who will stand by you, who will work with you while you're struggling through whatever it is you're struggling through. I feel like this is a very important topic because in these retrogrades, this is very much about working through the things that have come up for you in the past. So at this time, you might find that you have things coming up that haven't come up for you in a really long time. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, they're right there. And you're like, why is this here again? I thought I dealt with this. I thought I worked through this already. Why is this here again? And oftentimes things like that are here multiple times. Obviously, we've talked about this on many podcasts, is it comes off in layers. That work comes off in layers. But then also there is the aspect of the universe giving us those little tests to see how far we've come. Have we worked through this enough? Have we done enough work in this particular area where we are operating out of our unconditional love, out of our hearts, and our wounding is not even a blip on the screen? So pay attention to that. Pay attention to how you're feeling in situations like that. Pay attention to what is going on within you in situations like that. And of course, you can have compassion for the other person for whatever they might be going through and understanding. And if it warrants a conversation to unravel a misunderstanding, then absolutely do that if it's warranted. But make sure you're not moving into that people pleasing of over explaining, of over apologizing, of not being okay with somebody not liking you. And that's something that I've had to work really hard at. I've had to come to the conclusion that, you know what, not everybody's going to like me, and that's okay. Not everybody's going to think I'm the bee's knees, or, not everybody's going to think that I'm the coolest person in the world. That's awesome. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I have to look at it from the standpoint of this is not a value judgment on who I am. This is not sort of an indication or a reflection to me of what my self-worth is. Because if you already hold that self-worth within you, there's nothing on this planet that can shake that from you. There's no amount of vitriol, anger, hurt, any sort of words, any sort of actions that will shift or change that. When it's strong enough, you can have really great self-worth, but maybe it's not strong enough to withstand certain things. And that's where these types of situations come in and show you how strong your self-worth is. How strong you can say, you know what? I'm human. I make mistakes. And I'm really sorry that I made this mistake. And I'm looking at it and I'm working on it. And I've realized why this happened. And maybe it's something that it's an isolated incident. Maybe it's Mercury retrograde. Maybe it's like you just didn't pay attention. Okay, so now pay attention a little bit more in the future. Okay, great. That's the work. Sometimes the work doesn't have to be something super deep. Sometimes it can be something that is just being aware of what is going on around you. And sometimes I've had issues with that because I spend so much time in the records and so much time in the sort of higher realms at this point that sometimes when I'm in my 3D life, like some of the stuff that I have to do in a 3D way sort of falls through the cracks or, goes by the wayside because I'm not grounded enough or I haven't done a particular grounding practice that I needed to do in order to make sure that I'm paying attention. I can tell you this, that once you start doing this work, multitasking becomes infinitely harder. And the reason why is because you really do have to pay attention to what you're doing in the moment that you're doing it. So be kind to yourself. Understand that you may be doing the best that you possibly can at this very moment. And maybe that best is not up to other people's standards for this particular moment in time, but that's okay. It's all okay. So that's been a relatively long message regarding what I happen to be going through at this time for this particular retrograde season, if you will. And I'm going to tap into my guides and I'm going to ask them if they have any other messages for all of you, how to get through this retrograde season, how to move through everything that you might be going through right now in a more graceful way. One of the things that I would encourage you to do is to be able to take the time to pay attention to what you are doing in any given moment. Retrogrades are not necessarily evil as you would think they would be. A lot of you vilify the Mercury in retrograde. A lot of you vilify any planet being in retrograde, quite frankly. The challenge with that is that you are operating in your dualistic mentality. Everything has its light and its shadow. And if it's in the shadow, which you could say a retrograde is the shadow, there is always energy to be worked with. There is always energy to be harnessed during that time. When you are in a space of not understanding what's happening, you feel confused, you feel like you are not yourself, you feel like things are coming apart at the seams, use that. What is that showing you? That is showing you that you are ready to shed those old layers, those old things that you are not a part of anymore. It's time. It's time to move forward. And the easier you can move through these energies, the better. You can sort of go kicking and screaming, fighting it every step of the way, or you can allow the old to fall away gracefully. And yes, what Annette said earlier is true, that the universe will give you a test. It'll give you a test to see if you are really, truly over these particular energies. And if you look at this as something that keeps on coming up over and over again and you get frustrated and angry, that is an indication of where you still need to do the work. If you feel triggered in any way, that is a place where you still need to do the work. Use this as a tool, as a gift to be able to clean up your energy field, because ultimately, one of the best things that you can do during a retrograde is to clean house, literally, figuratively, your spiritual house, if you will. It is something that is truly, truly important for you to do on a regular basis. And if you're not doing it on a regular basis, the retrograde is a prime time to do it. Take a look at all of those things that are coming up for you. What areas of your life are they coming up in? One of the things that Annette has done during this retrograde is exactly that. She started to look at the places in which she is feeling that wounding, where she's still feeling that that work needs to be done. A lot of this work that she did was actually in the last full moon. And so therefore, she is not feeling these energies as strongly as other people are at this time. That has nothing to do with her being further along than anybody else or on the leading edge, as you would often say as spiritual leaders. It's not about being on the leading edge. It is simply about whether or not you're going to move through these energies and when it's the right time for you to move through these energies. It just so happened that for her, moving through these energies a month ago was exactly what she needed, and she proactively did so. And that often can be the case. If you're proactive about this healing work, if you're proactive about moving through these energies, it's going to be less potent. It's going to be less strong for you. If you're unaware of these energies coming up, that is where they can smack you in the face and completely knock you over. So from that standpoint, it is important for you to pay attention to what is going on with the energies, with the astrology. Annette doesn't often do that since astrology is not her main focus. But of course, she's aware of the things that are happening because they are posted on social media in terms of when retrogrades are, when what planets are coming up, when what strength of energy is having an effect on the collective. Not only that, but then she also hears it from all of you. She hears it from all of her clients, what happens to be going on. So pay attention. If you need to mark it in your calendar, do so. And ask your heart, ask your guides, what is it that I can do proactively in order to make this retrograde, whatever it happens to be, a more pleasant one, a less harsh one that I can move through gracefully as opposed to stumbling through. This is something that is truly important for your experience. Now, this is not to say that things won't happen that will be frustrating. Annette was just thinking about some of the things that she's experienced in the last couple of days. She had made many plans over the last couple of days, and many of them were canceled. Many of them didn't work out. Many of them didn't work out the way that she had planned. Many of them have been moved. And she has just rolled with it and allowed that to happen. Even though yesterday for her was nothing like she expected it to be. But she allowed that to happen. Same thing with this morning. She was trying to buy tickets to her oh-so-favorite Disney Halloween party. And the website was down, and then the website crashed, and she couldn't get the tickets. But then eventually she was successful. She was able to get the tickets. She got a little bit frustrated initially, but then she was able to move into allowing the energy to move through, understanding that it's Mercury retrograde, that technological things have a tendency to go a little haywire. And she just left it up to the universe that if it was meant for her to go to this party, she would be able to purchase the tickets. This is something that you all can practice. Allowing, releasing control, being able to go with the flow. That is being in non-resistance. That is moving through these retrogrades gracefully. I encourage you to try it. If something happens, you can laugh it off. You can take a step back, take a deep breath, release the control, and see what unfolds for you. because maybe it's going to be something you never expected. Maybe it's going to be something that's beneficial for you. You don't know. You don't know how that's going to unfold, but I encourage you to allow. There is nothing else I would like to say on this topic. I would just like to wish you all a beautiful week, setting the intention for a beautifully transformative week. This is Akula, Annette's Akashic Guide, and I am honored to speak with you on this day. Thank you so much, Akula. That was lovely. Thanks. Okay, so what are you going through right now? I would love to hear from you. Write in the comments of the social media post regarding this particular episode. Send me an email if you'd like, Annette@infinitesoullove.com. I also want to let you know that I am starting a new show for the podcast with my friend Julia, and we are essentially going to be recording Akashic Record sessions with your permission. There are going to be limited spots available, only 20 spots available, and you will get this particular Akashic Record session at a discount, and it will be an 1.5-hour session. We may require you to have another half-hour call afterwards for some feedback on what you were feeling during the session, what was happening for you. And so if you're interested, please do not hesitate to email me, Annette@infinitesoullove.com, and just let me know that you would like to be a part of the podcast. And if you are interested, we will make arrangements. We will have a release that you will be signing, understanding that your session will be recorded and that you do give your permission to be able to use it for the podcast. Now, just because we record it for the podcast doesn't mean we're going to use it. It will depend on what comes up. It will depend on a couple of different things that Julie and I have decided ahead of time as far as subject matter. But if you are interested, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm sending you tons and tons of love, and I wish you a beautiful, smooth, graceful, allowing week. Have an amazing day and never stop exploring your soul, because it is the most important relationship you will ever have. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com. On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111. Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.